Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. Today's guest is Derby farmer Andy Birch, and he's here to talk about, well, a little bit about farming and about an award he recently received. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Thank you, Scott. Good morning.
So, Andy, I know you've heard things like this before. So, as we record, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. Are you done with the morning chores?
I am done with the morning chores. We fed the cows, we milked them, and we've had breakfast.
So that means
Yep.
now. So that means you have the entire, because farmers. Some people think farmers work in the morning when the cows come in or they want to be milked, and then in the evening. So you have off all day today, correct?
Oh, of course. We're going to do nothing at all the rest of the day until it's time to bring the cows in. But yeah, we're just in the middle of renovating the farmhouse kitchen, and I have to move fence and mix a new load of feed for this afternoon. And yeah, we've got a busy day planned ahead of us.
But how many people? Because I once spoke to a guy who moved here, and he decided to be a farmer like his ancestors had been. And he truly thought that was the life of a farmer, that it was going to be kind of like retirement. That he was going to be able to work with the cows in the morning and work with the cows in the afternoon. And then he'd have pretty much the day off to, kind of be semi-retired. How long do you think he lasted with that illusion?
Weeks, months?
Maybe months, but he quickly realized, he said, when lunch consisted of holding on to a sandwich with one hand and a wrench with another, fixing a piece of equipment.
That sounds right.
So what was this? So how long have you been farming? All your life to some degree?
Yeah. So my wife, Sarah, and I are farming on the farm I grew up on. My parents bought that when I was a year old in the late 80s. And we have been back on the farm running it for 9 years now.
Now, when you went into farming, I think probably people thought, what are you doing? Because if you went into a period of time where family farms were disappearing at a rapid pace.
The same question applies today. Family farms are still disappearing at a rapid pace, but we've managed to become profitable and make a go of it. And I really don't know what differentiates us from some of the ones who've folded, although a lot of the ones that have exited the business have been due to retirement and not having another generation coming down the pipeline, or not having the right situation to transition the farm to that next generation. We've managed to hold things together with my parents, our landlords, and work together to get the crops in and take good care of our cows, and somehow managed to support ourselves with the income we've received from selling milk.
Now, I've never been a farmer, but I am a small business owner, and I don't know if there's any comparison. I know small farms are probably considered small businesses, but when you're in a small business, you also have to manage your money wisely and not overspend and put yourself too much into debt. Is that one of your secrets as well, with a small farm?
I think that did help us. We started with a sizable loan to buy the cows when we first got going. We brought money with us that Sarah and I had saved in our careers before we were on our own, and we managed to keep things together until the loans were paid off. And of course, it's been a little easier going since then. But uh, I think the bigger factor is that we've gotten into a better rhythm and our cows are doing better now. Because even though the loans are gone, other costs have increased by more than what the loan payment was. The cost of milk hauling, for instance, has increased substantially in those 9 years. As anyone knows, costs have gone up a lot the last few years, all across the
So,
economy.
you know, I remember where I first, do you remember where we first met?
I think we first met at the State House, right? When you were
Right,
a
right.
legislator?
Yeah, I was in legislature and you were this sharp, I think you testified in our committee and you already had your act together way back then and you knew what you wanted.
That helps. Sarah and I picked a difficult career, but it helped that we had direction. If you have goals and you have something to plan for, you'll make more progress than if you don't know where you're going. Um, Even if it's a difficult row to hoe, if you can make a plan and and go in a direction, you'll make progress.
Right.
Yep.
Now, a lot of farmers, a lot of dairy farmers, or at least some have diversified as well. Have you diversified any out of Darien or is it just exclusively Darien?
We are exclusively getting our household income from dairy. We've looked at diversification, but at the end of the day, we don't have those extra hours uh, to devote to a second labor-intensive income stream like on-farm retail or another crop. Most everything in the world of agriculture that we've looked at, we would need additional labor in a significant way, and we haven't really found another way to diversify that looked like it was going to be a slam dunk. It has always seemed like it was better for us to double down our efforts on what we're already good at and what we already know. Try to We've made more progress finding a way to market an extra 200,000 pounds of milk in a year than if we focused on a tangential income stream.
Now, you've also, well, you and your wife, because I believe you, like my late wife, are a team. You've actually captured the attention of farmers around the state, and you were recently recognized. And what was that honor?
Okay. The award, which I didn't even know I'd been nominated for, was for the Vermont Agricultural Hall of Fame as in their emerging leader category. So that's for someone in the world of Vermont agriculture under 40. And I'm not quite there yet, so I managed to. I guess someone thought I deserved it, and the committee agreed. I suspect that the nominator was someone at Cabot Creamery Cooperative, just based on the application that was sent in and what they mentioned. But it was a great honor to be there and be recognized with some of the lifetime achievement winners who I've known for years, and I've really strived to follow in their footsteps.
So, what do you recall? What the reasoning was that they used the person who nominated you used for nominating you? What stuck out to them?
I know the write-up mentioned some of the work I've done with Cabot, uh, serving on the Young Cooperators Committee and as a delegate within the cooperative. Uh, plus, we're, I know I'm also on the board of directors for Orleans County Farm Bureau, and I give blood frequently through the Red Cross, and try to encourage other people to do that as well. I know those are some of the things that were mentioned in the application.
So when I was telling you, like, my wife was a team in my business, are you and Sarah, are you like a team?
Oh, for sure, Scott. I see a lot of similarities between you and Penny and Sarah and me, and I haven't said this in person, but my condolences, of course, for her
Oh,
passing.
thanks. Yeah, that
I
was
couldn't
a,
yeah, I couldn't imagine doing what I do daily without Sarah by my side. We work together every day, and um, I know it drives some couples crazy being together that much, but it works for us. We've always liked each other's company, and we seem to think the same way.
oh, I feel the same way. Some people it would, well, I have the ability to drive people crazy anyways, but my wife and I, we worked together for many years, and hey, it worked for us. Might not work for other people, but I'm glad it's working for you. Hey, off that topic, talking about working on the farm, I understand one of your, well, was it your parents hired man, Mr. Palin? Um, Mr. Palin's 99 years old. I don't know if he's looking to do any more milking. Did he ever work for you or just your parents?
Dean never worked for me personally. He worked for my parents mostly when I was younger. I think they hired him part-time after he sold his cows, and he was probably their favorite hired man ever. I know my dad loved working around him and hearing his stories, and of course, the man was just a wealth of knowledge from this area. So I remember him being around all the time when I was little, even as he got older. And once Sarah and I came home and brought the cows back, he would stop in probably 3 or 4 times a year to inspect the place and give it his seal of approval. Unfortunately, we haven't seen him for a few years because I think his health has declined. But
Yeah, he
yeah,
lives down in Lyndonville now with his son, and but his son just told me he's turning 99. And so, have you ever contemplated growing his epic mustache, the signature look?
yeah. I could try, but I couldn't succeed at that. My facial hair isn't quite what his is.
No,
Yeah,
no.
his
Okay.
yeah, his defining characteristic.
Oh, sure. So what do you see as your future and yours and Sarah's future in farming? It looks like you're raised. It looks like you have a couple little farm hands you're raising. Do you think they'll take over someday?
So we have two little farm hands, a 7-year-old named Hannah and a 5-year-old named Ida. And right now, anyway, Hannah is planning for both of them to farm with us, or at least be involved in the business. Um, which, if she's anything like me, I have no reason to doubt that. Even at 7 years old, we'll see. Um, yeah, right now, Sarah and I are farming in a really old barn that's was built in the late 19th century, and even with some updates, it's still extremely labor intensive. So we are hoping to build a new barn here. We've been working with, uh, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the agency right now, but an advisor anyway to hopefully help us through that process so we can get into a more modern facility and uh, have something that's more comfortable for us and for the cows that we work with every day and depend on. Um, it's going to be a pretty big hurdle, but if we want to create a future for ourselves where we can work here the rest of our careers without killing ourselves, we really need to work on modernizing.
Now, will you keep the old barn, or will that come down?
Our plan would be to keep the old barn, if it's at all possible. We've done some work on it over the years. It needs a lot more, but at least for now, we intend to keep it, and we may end up still milking in it, possibly retrofitting a parlor, even if we built a new barn for the cows to live in every day. Yeah, it's a labor of love. We love the old barn, but it certainly has seen some use and wear over the 125 or so years it's been standing. I think we had an estimate that to really fix it right and put a new foundation under it would take somewhere around $500,000, and we're not going to do that sort of repair on it, because then you get up into the cost of just building a new barn and ending up with something that's more functional. But we're hoping we can at least keep it standing and useful without repairs that are, that expensive and substantial.
So here's the something that happens all too often with farmers, especially it seems like after the hay crop goes in, fires. When I'm going through old newspapers, when there were a lot of farmers, newspapers were filled with barns burning down. And then we recently, Lawson's, I believe it was, recently lost a barn over in Coventry, Irisburg, I believe. Is that a constant worry of yours?
So a few years ago, in a short period of time, we had the two barn fires in Barton, the Pines, and then the barn near the fairgrounds, and Robillard Flats, their round barn, all in a short period of time burned. And I remember just lying awake in bed at night, just terrified of what would happen if ours caught fire, because it would burn just as hot and just as catastrophically as those other three. And yeah, depending on the circumstances, it would be very difficult to get the animals out. Yeah, it's a constant fear.
Yeah, I can. What are a lot of them? Are they like spontaneous combustion? And I imagine some of the old farms have old barns have old wiring.
There's old wiring. I think one of the barn fires I heard of was due to welding, some sparks that got away from a welding project. There are a lot of sources of ignition, and you just have to do your best to control them. Be vigilant.
You mentioned wouldn't be able to get your cows out. What kind of relationship do you have with your cows?
We work with them closely every day, and I don't know, we like to be friends with them. It's better for everyone if we're on good terms and they're comfortable with us being there. And yeah, it's just a much more pleasant atmosphere being on good terms with them. And they've had to adjust too. I remember when we first started farming, my cousin had small children, and when they came to visit, the cows were freaked out by them. Like, what are these tiny humans? And yeah, they've had to get used to our own girls, and now they don't bat an eye at 30-pound children wandering around. But they definitely know when it's someone else. And we have a high school kid who milks for us usually 5 or 6 nights a week and does a great job. But yeah, the cows even treat him differently than they do Sarah and me.
Now, are you a farmer that names them all?
Yes, we name all of them. And we have our favorites, of course. Sarah likes her jerseys. I prefer my black and white Holsteins, and my brother even has a taste for brown Swiss.
Yeah. So tell me, I know a little bit about the differences because I've written articles, including with Dean Palin when I did an article on him. But how do you decide what you're going to have for a cow, a Jersey versus a Holstein? And why do you decide?
Some of that comes down to personal preference. I think most research would point to either Jerseys or Holsteins being the most profitable. The records that I have from our farm show the Holsteins as a group being more profitable than the Jerseys being just behind them, and the Swiss in third place. And some of it depends on the situation. The size of the stalls can make a difference. The Jerseys are much smaller than the Holsteins, so if the stalls in the barn are too small, Jerseys could be a much better fit. And there are a few other breeds too that people have around. Holsteins tend to give the most milk. Jerseys tend to give the least, but the fat and protein content tends to be higher. So you may get paid more even though you're selling less. And the brown Swiss can be somewhere in the middle.
I think Dean taught me well when I interviewed him, because I think I knew pretty much everything you said. So yep, Dean taught me well.
Yep, Dean loves his jerseys.
Didn't Dean though eventually? Didn't he switch from one direction to the other? I can't remember if he did or not, but
I know he had some brown Swiss from the teacher Hall.
oh
Hall
yeah,
at
Dick Hall,
some
yeah.
point, but I don't think that was a permanent thing. I thought he had jerseys right the way through, but maybe not. No,
So
I remember reading your article on Dick Hall, and the brown Swiss was like the talk about the brown Swiss farm was about 2 paragraphs, and if I'd written it, it would have been probably half to 3/4 of the article.
Well, that's it. Yeah, that article, we were focused more on his World War II diary and his journey. But no, you're probably right there. So, do you grow any crops?
Yeah, we mostly grow hay to feed our cows, and then we grow about 35 acres of corn also for feeding the cows too, and that's going to get chopped here in the next week or two.
Hey, here's a really dumb question from a non-farmer. Why does cow corn taste different than other corn that you typically eat? Is it just their genetic makeup?
It's mostly the genetic makeup. The cow corn tends to be much higher in starch and lower in sugars, so it tastes, I don't know, more like a potato, I guess, for a comparison. The sweet corn we tend to eat has a much higher sugar content, so it tastes sweeter and is just more palatable.
You ever eaten any cow corn?
Yeah, I've tried it.
Not
Nothing dangerous about it, but I wouldn't want to eat it for a whole meal. There was one year the custom planter didn't clean out his planter well enough, and there was some leftover sweet corn in the planter boxes. So the first pass around was a mix of cow corn and sweet corn, and it was just too bad he didn't do it at the home farm. So it ended up being one of the far-flung rented fields. So we didn't get much of a crop out of that to enjoy for ourselves, but the cows still got to eat it.
So, how many cows do you have? How many head do you have?
We have 56 cows and about 30 heifers. So,
What kind of relationship do you have with the big farmers? Like, let's just say Doug Nelson, who's he's not too far from you.
Yep. We get along fine with all of our farm neighbors. We haven't really had any friction to speak of with Nelsons. We haven't exactly poached land from each other or anything like that. You know, I see the Nelsons at farm meetings, and we're always happy to say hi to them. My younger daughter actually goes to preschool with it would be one of Doug's granddaughters, and plays with her outside at recess all the time.
You know, when you were growing up, I believe you grew up in a time where there weren't many farm kids in school, because I'm 58, and not everybody worked on a farm, but there were still a fair number of people. So they were in the minority, but they had people around them. Did you grow up with many people, especially in high school, who were farmers?
There weren't a lot of us. There were a few. Even in elementary school, there were still enough Derby dairy farms that I had, maybe half a dozen kids in my class uh, that also grew up on farms. And I think it got a little harder in high school because everyone gets clicky and you get separated out by interest. And yeah, it was okay. There were a few, but maybe it would have been easier if it was something everyone did.
I think a lot of times people who aren't in a certain profession, whether it be farming, sugaring, or even writing, people romanticize things. And I think people who aren't farmers, they look at farming as a bit romantic, but the realities of it is a lot of work.
It is. It's a ton of work. We enjoy the rewards of being self-employed and being able to kind of set our own schedule, even if the cows dictate that a lot. But we like being able to make our own decisions, and even with the commitment, we're still making our own way, and we're able to all work together as a family and enjoy each other's company.
We only have a couple minutes left, but the one thing, I've even seen memes about this on Facebook. Most of us, especially non-farmers, you cannot go by a farm field with cows in it without exclaiming, "Oh, cows!" Do you still have to announce there's cows in a field?
Cows, crops, barns, machinery, all of it. Yes.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, we've got to wrap up here. It was great having you on. I know you've been on before, but I wanted to have you again because I had read that you'd been honored, and I thought it was time to have you back on.
Well, I appreciate the invitation, Scott. Thank you.
And thank you for providing us with plenty of milk.
You're most welcome.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Scott.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.